Back to the meeting that was adjourned from yesterday, and we're meeting today to discuss the submission on the draft Transition Recovery Plan, Greater Christchurch Earthquake Recovery Transition to Regeneration, July 2015. And I'm going to just perhaps present the submission, and then we'll open it up for debate. The resolution that we hope to adopt is to adopt the draft submission with final sign-off being delegated to the Transitional Working Group, so that enables any changes that we want to make to it and particular emphases that we might want to highlight to be addressed. In the forward, I've actually quoted Rebecca Solnit, who is a very well-known author, and she said this: "In great cities, spaces as well as places are designed and built. Walking, witnessing, being in public are as much part of the design and purpose as is being inside to eat, sleep, make shoes or love or music. The word citizen has to do with cities, and the ideal city is organised around citizenship, around participation in public life." Participation in public life is exactly what regeneration is designed to achieve. And that phrase, that word, regeneration, has actually excited quite a lot of interest in the Transition Recovery Plan itself, because shifting from recovery to regeneration means something. It means something quite different. And when we look at the draft Transition Recovery Plan, and when we look at the Advisory Board's report to the Minister, then we can see that it means a step change, something positive, something different, something new, and an increased level of opportunity that we have before us. And interestingly for me was that when we were coming up with a title for our long-term plan, we called it Christchurch 2015 to 2025, Building Resilience from Recovery to Regeneration. And I remember the discussions that we had about whether regeneration was the right word. And the reason that we came to agree amongst ourselves that regeneration would be the right word was that it managed to capture both the combination of restoration on the one hand and new growth on the other. And we are experiencing restoration and new growth in our city at the moment. So the idea that we've shifted from response to recovery to regeneration, it is part of a journey that we are on as a city. Regeneration does represent a step change. That means a significant change, it means a positive change. And in the context of regeneration is a term that actually embraces that world of opportunity that can be captured by reimagining our future. And reimagining our future not just from the perspective of putting back what was there before, but reimagining our future as one seen through the lens of sustainability. And if you think about what the rest of the world is grappling with at the moment, some of the issues that we can find answers to today are answers to questions that the rest of the world will be seeking tomorrow. There is a lot about what we have experienced and what we are experiencing that we can contribute not only to our city, but to our country and indeed to the world. Regeneration is also reflected in that sense of energy, creativity and flair of the transitional movement that has emerged in the post-disaster environment. If anyone thinks this is unusual, it isn't. This is what happens. The sense of possibility that arises in a post-disaster environment, we all now know the expression, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. And working for a council now, you certainly know that a lot of people would prefer to ask for forgiveness than permission, given how long the permission might take to arrive. depending on the circumstances, it might be less of a trial and may cost less in the long run. But that whole sense of possibility that's emerged from the transitional movement, that's put Christchurch on the world stage. It actually was nothing about the disaster that put Christchurch as one of the must-see places in the Lonely Planet or in the New York Times. It wasn't because of anything that we would think about in terms of Christchurch's history. It was about the transition. They were looking at the Restart Mall, they're looking at gap filler, they're looking at life in vacant spaces, they're looking at all of these things emerging from the rubble, as it were, of the disaster that has affected our city. At the same time, Regeneration allows us as a city to focus on the intention of the anchor projects. And I know that there are discussions that we have from time to time about anchor projects, and they will excite a lot of attention, as they did during the consideration of our long-term plan. The number of people who sat at the end of the table and raised this anchor project and that anchor project. The purpose of the anchor projects is not the anchor projects, it's the enlivening of the spaces in between. It's actually to catalyse development around them. That's what they're for. That's what they were always designed for. And that's what this focus on regeneration enables us as a city to actually finally bring to fruition. As a city, we all have an absolute direct interest in what's called the commons, the public realm, the places where people participate in public life, as Rebecca Solnit describes it. We also have a very indirect interest, but very explicit, but indirect interest in the private developments that will use the anchor projects as the springboard for development. And that's what the anchor projects were always designed to do. And for us as a city, it is more than developing a vibrant central city. It's a given. We need a vibrant central city to make things happen. But for us as a city council, it is about regenerating the range of suburban centres that support the neighbourhoods that have been so badly hit by the earthquakes. We don't divide our city east and west, and we don't divide our city centre and the rest. We actually make sure that we are holistic in the view of the city as a whole, and what is it that we can bring to that city. As Solnit says, the ideal city is organised around citizenship. And that's what we've been talking about all through the long-term plan. People came over and over and over again, and they didn't come to ask for us to do things for them. They came and asked us to partner with them and do things together. They actually asked if they could have permission to do things for themselves with our support, financial, legislative, regulatory, whatever support it was. They weren't asking for us to do everything for those communities. Taking that broader perspective of regeneration enables us to give people a reason to engage with their city in a positive and meaningful way. And of course, the other driver for step change is building momentum. You know, and it is important. You know, I've worked in this area for quite a long time. There is a view that you've got to do things very, very quickly. And there is a need for momentum. But there also is a need for deliberation. The balance between speed and deliberation is very, very important. In fact, it's so important that I created my own expression to describe it, and that is, take your time as quickly as you can. And the truth is that people need to see that things are happening. They need to see the milestones along the way. They need to know when things are going to be happening. They need a timeline. It doesn't matter if there's the odd falter. It always happens in a disaster environment. There's always going to be things that take time or things that don't quite go to plan. But when you tell people this is what you're committed to, you actually give it a sense of momentum in itself. And it's much more likely to occur than not to have that sense of momentum built there. So I think to get that balance right is something that we can do. setting up Development Christchurch is a signal to our strategic partners that we are ready to do things differently, not just BAU, but actually a new way of partnering with the government, with our communities and with the private sector in a way that business as usual models just simply cannot. And I think the other point that I make in this forward is that we don't have the capacity as a city to do everything at once, and we don't have the capacity to do it alone. And that's why the concept of collaboration and partnership and co-governance that emerges from the transition discussion is something that is really, really powerful. And I guess that what the government's looking for is a council that's ready to step up and play its role, and I say that we here in Christchurch are ready for that challenge. So what we are debating today is not just a submission. In many respects, it's a statement of intent. When I was elected mayor, I said the city was ready and willing, but not yet able. Today, I can say we are not only ready, willing and able, but we are actually quite excited about the opportunity that this presents. The government's commitment to shifting from centralised leadership to local leadership is something we welcome. We absolutely welcome it, and we give confidence and reassurance to the Government of New Zealand that we as a city are prepared to take up the challenge that they have thrown down. The proposed submission we're debating today deals with principles and values against which we would measure decision-making approaches rather than the specifics of things like a future Regenerate Christchurch. The Minister has been invited by Cabinet to work with me in my capacity as Mayor of the city to investigate establishing such an entity, recognising that we've set up Development Christchurch to deliver and develop our objectives. This single decision signals the government's willingness to collaborate with the city and through the council to engage with the people of Christchurch on the next stage of the recovery. I kind of wanted to put something on record, and I know that people, sort of get out of bed in the morning and think, oh, I just love that urban development strategy. But here is the vision statement that was written back in 2007. By the year 2041, Greater Christchurch has a vibrant inner city and suburban centres surrounded by thriving rural communities and towns, connected by efficient and sustainable infrastructure. There are a wealth of public spaces ranging from bustling inner city streets to expansive open spaces and parks which embrace natural systems, landscapes and heritage. Innovative businesses are welcome and can thrive, supported by a wide range of attractive facilities and opportunities. Prosperous communities can enjoy a variety of lifestyles and good health and safety, enriched by the diversity of cultures and the beautiful environment of Greater Christchurch. This was written 3 years before our earthquake, and yet it still has meaning today. But what I found interesting about this strategy, and it isn't just a strategy on paper, regular meetings between the partners that now guide the urban development strategy enable it to be given effect to. And in fact, if anyone wants to say, was this city better prepared for the disaster that was to befall us and the need for rapid assessments to be made of land use changes and things like that, we were already there. But the guiding principles really do stand for me instead as a kind of a beacon of the sorts of things that we should be thinking about. Sustainable prosperity is the overarching principle achieved through strategy partners committing to providing leadership and to work in partnership with each other and the community and taking responsibility for decisions. Decision-making will be based upon the need for resilience, adaptability to change, the need for innovation to find creative approaches, and through integration between partners, plans and processes. In so doing, we must value and look to the restoration of our natural systems. This is 2007. The strategic directions outline the strategy outcomes and provide the basis for the specific actions listed in the action plan, and this is really the nub of it. They focus on enriching lifestyles, enhancing environments, encouraging prosperous economies, managing growth, providing effective governance and leadership, and integrating implementation. Well, that sounds like a recovery strategy to me, and if you actually think about where we got to after even the September earthquake and then the February earthquakes, the recovery strategy was really in place in 2012, and yet all of the words, all of the objectives, they were there right from the start. So are we ready in Christchurch? Are we ready in Greater Christchurch to take up the challenge that the government has given us of local leadership? Yes, we are. Since the earthquakes, life has changed. Every one of the reports that have fed into the draft recovery plan highlight the tale of two cities. Unresolved EQC claims, unresolved insurance claims becomes the determinant of well-being. And all of the evidence backs that up. My memory of that time will actually go back to the opening lines of the Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The best was the way that our communities came together. Incredibly powerful, that knowledge in communities that we were competent to do things for ourselves. An incredible sense of neighbourhoods, friends, families coming together to support each other. And that's why we refer to Sir Peter Gluckman's report in this recommended submission. A feeling of self-efficacy and community efficacy assists the population in reactivating their coping mechanisms. Local governance, empowerment and ownership have been shown to facilitate recovery. When did he write this? May 2011, just months after the February earthquake. Based on all of the available evidence, this is what makes the difference. The inevitable tensions and conflicts in achieving this are obvious. Long-term versus short-term, public versus private, local versus national interests, and cannot be avoided. Rather, they have to be openly handled with sensitivity. And that's what the council does, the way it makes its decisions. We debate these issues in the public arena, and that is good for the city. But they have to be handled with sensitivity, as we know with issues like the challenges we face in terms of the coastal environment, the sea level rise. Those issues need to be handled with sensitivity. It follows that from the psychosocial perspective, those involved in directing the recovery should create governance structures that understand and actively include community participation and enhance individual and community resilience. Such approaches will be most likely to be effective in re-establishing coping and functioning communities. May 2011, we're ready to take up that role and ensure that our communities are fully engaged in the process of recovery, restoration and now regeneration. Nobody should ever underestimate the knowledge that is embedded in our communities. Nobody should underestimate it. It offers value to planning. It offers value to budgeting. It offers value to decision making. And the more that we engage with our local communities, the better it is. And when I say communities, I mean communities of place, I mean communities of identity, and I mean communities of interest as well. The next, I guess that what is critical to the point that we're in at the moment is to have a number of approaches that enable things to be resolved. So we've set out on page 14 of our submission a number of themes, really, that enable us to move forward. Developing a common and shared view of the remaining problems at this stage in the recovery through information sharing and joint engagement on the issues. Confirming the solution decided amidst the various existing program level governance structures, but on a no surprises basis. And in many respects, this was designed through the cost sharing agreement and requires to be refreshed in this context. Considering collectively the effectiveness of interventions put in place and programs of work underway, being clear about the role of governors, the Crown and the Council, and agreeing on a process for resolution where assumptions and or programs of work are not aligned to affect the best outcomes for all. And I kind of want to conclude on that, the best outcomes for all, because we could sit here and have a conversation about what's best for Sarah, what's best for government, what's best for council, what's best for the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. But that's not the test, not from here on in. The test for what comes now is what's best for Christchurch. What's best for Christchurch will be what defines the regeneration of our city. And look, there are so many different ways that you could find to define regeneration. And so I just wanted to end with a phrase that I thought captured why the word regeneration excites me. And this is the co-developer of East London's Silvertown Quays, who said, "There is no template. Over 2 decades, every project has been different. 2 givens. First, regeneration is a long-term process. Patience is needed. A problem given short-term property perspectives. Second, investing in social capital is as important as the physical side, but is often not understood. Regeneration is now where the action is." And that's what we need to do. We need to get that balance right. It isn't just about regenerating the physical of the city. It is about regenerating the spirit of Christchurch. And I believe that we now have the opportunity to do that. So I'd like to open it up for, I'd like to move the motion, and would someone like to second it? And Phil and Raph, would you like to?